Simone had sensed something wrong for weeks, but she'd pushed the feeling aside like dirty laundry she'd deal with later. Derek had been distant, coming home late, spending hours on his phone with a secretive smile. When she'd asked about it, he'd blamed work stress at his accounting firm. That Tuesday morning, she decided to surprise him with lunch. She'd spent 2 hours making his favorite meal, pepper steak with rice, and headed to his office downtown. But Derek's assistant, Jennifer, had looked confused when Simone arrived. "He called in sick today," Jennifer said, checking her computer. "Said he'd be out all week." The pepper steak container felt heavy in Simone's hands as she walked back to her car. Derek hadn't mentioned being sick. In fact, he'd left that morning in a suit, kissing her cheek and saying he had back-to-back meetings until 7. She'd driven home in silence, her mind spinning with possibilities she didn't want to consider. Maybe he had a doctor's appointment he'd forgotten to mention. Maybe Jennifer had made a mistake. Maybe there was a perfectly reasonable explanation. The apartment was on the 15th floor of a modern building in downtown Atlanta. Derek had been so proud when he'd signed the lease 3 years ago, right after his promotion. "This is just the beginning," he'd told Simone, spinning her around the empty living room. "We're going places, baby." But when Simone opened the apartment door that afternoon, she found Derek sitting at their kitchen table with papers spread in front of him. He looked up with an expression she'd never seen before, cold and determined. "We need to talk," he said. Simone set the pepper steak on the counter, her heart starting to pound. "Jennifer said you called in sick." "I did. I needed time to prepare for this conversation." Derek pushed the papers toward her. "I want a divorce." The words didn't make sense at first. Simone stared at him, waiting for the punchline, the smile, the just kidding that would make everything normal again. But Derek's face remained serious. "A divorce." Her voice sounded small and distant, like it belonged to someone else. "I've met someone else. Someone who understands me better, who shares my ambitions." Derek stood up, straightening his tie like he was preparing for a business presentation. "You're a good person, Simone, but we've grown apart. You're content with this simple life and I need more." "Who is she?" Derek hesitated, then shrugged. "Candace." The name hit Simone like a physical blow. She gripped the edge of the counter to steady herself. "Candace, my best friend Candace. She didn't plan for this to happen any more than I did. We connected at your birthday dinner last month. We've been talking every day since then and we realized we're in love." Derek's tone was matter of fact, like he was discussing a business merger. "She's moving in today. I need you to pack your essential items and leave." Simone's mind raced backward to her birthday dinner 6 weeks ago. She remembered Candace sitting next to Derek, the two of them laughing at some private joke. She'd felt a twinge of something then, but she dismissed it as paranoia. "You can't just kick me out. This is my home too." "Actually, the lease is in my name only. My lawyer checked." Derek pulled out his phone and started typing. "You have 2 hours to pack. Security will change the locks at 6 o'clock. Derek, please, can we talk about this? Go to counseling, I love you." He finally looked at her, really looked at her, and there was nothing in his eyes but impatience. "I stopped loving you a long time ago, Simone. I just didn't know how to tell you. Now I do. Please don't make this harder than it has to be." 90 minutes later, Simone stood in the rain with her single suitcase, watching her life disappear behind locked doors. She had nowhere to go. Her mother lived in a nursing home in Florida. Her father had passed away when she was 12. She had no siblings, no close relatives in Atlanta, and apparently no real friends if Candace was any indication. Her phone buzzed, a text from Candace. "I'm sorry it happened this way, but you have to understand we didn't choose this. Love just happens." Simone deleted the message without responding. She opened her banking app and stared at the $847 balance. Not enough for a security deposit on an apartment. Not enough for more than a few nights at a cheap motel. Not enough for anything resembling a future. The rain fell harder, soaking through her clothes and plastering her hair to her face. Simone picked up her suitcase and started walking, having no destination in mind, just knowing she couldn't stand in front of that building anymore. She ended up at a 24-hour diner 3 blocks away, sitting in a corner booth with a cup of coffee she couldn't afford but ordered anyway. The waitress, an older woman with kind eyes, didn't ask why Simone was soaking wet or why she'd been crying. Simone's phone buzzed again. This time it was Derek's lawyer with an email containing the divorce papers. She was supposed to sign and return them within 10 days. The email also informed her that since she'd quit her job voluntarily and they had no children, she wasn't entitled to alimony or any division of assets. "Everything okay, honey?" The waitress refilled Simone's coffee without asking. "My husband left me for my best friend today." The words came out flat and emotionless. The waitress squeezed Simone's shoulder. "Then he's a fool and she's not much of a friend. You'll get through this." Simone wanted to believe her, but sitting in that diner with everything she owned in a single suitcase, she couldn't see how. The life she'd built, the future she'd imagined, all of it had been torn away in less than 2 hours. And the worst part was knowing that Derek and Candace were together right now, probably relieved that the difficult conversation was over, ready to start their new life in the apartment that used to be Simone's home. She stayed in that diner until midnight, drinking coffee and trying to figure out what came next. Simone spent her first night as a homeless person sleeping in her 2015 Honda Civic in a hospital parking lot. She'd read online that hospital lots were safer than street parking because they were well lit and monitored. The back seat wasn't long enough for her to stretch out fully, so she'd curled into a ball with her jacket as a pillow. Every time she started to drift off, car doors would slam or voices would echo across the lot, jerking her back to awareness. By dawn, her neck ached and her eyes burned from exhaustion and crying. She'd never felt more alone in her life. That first morning, she'd driven to a gym she'd belonged to years ago, hoping her membership was still active. It wasn't, but the desk attendant, a young guy with purple hair, let her use the shower anyway after she explained her situation. "My sister went through something similar," he said, handing her a towel. "Took her a while, but she bounced back. You will too." Simone wanted to believe him. She showered, changed into clean clothes from her suitcase and tried to look presentable. Then she drove to her old workplace, the Grandview Hotel, hoping they might have an opening. The manager, Mrs. Chen, greeted her warmly at first. But when Simone explained she needed her old job back, Mrs. Chen's expression turned sympathetic but firm. "I'm sorry, Simone, we don't have any openings right now. And honestly, you'd need to reapply through corporate. It's not the same process as when you left. I can start immediately, any position, any shift." Mrs. Chen shook her head. "I wish I could help, but we're actually cutting hours right now, not hearing. Have you tried the other hotels downtown?" Simone spent the next 3 days applying everywhere. Hotels, restaurants, retail stores, coffee shops. She filled out applications until her fingers cramped and her eyes blurred from staring at computer screens in public libraries. Every night, she returned to the hospital parking lot in her car. On the 4th day, she got a call back from a cleaning company. The manager, Mr. Rodriguez, offered her a position starting at $12 an hour, working overnight shifts cleaning office buildings. "I'll take it," Simone said immediately, relief flooding through her. "Great, you start Monday night, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Mr. Rodriguez handed her a uniform. "You'll need steel-toed boots. Can you get those by Monday?" Simone looked at the $127 left in her checking account. Boots would cost at least $50. "Yes, I can manage that." That Saturday, Simone was sitting in her car in a grocery store parking lot, eating a peanut butter sandwich for dinner, when someone knocked on her window. She jumped, clutching her sandwich, and found a woman about her age peering in with concern. Simone rolled down the window partway. Can I help you? I'm sorry to bother you, but I've seen you parked here the last 2 nights. Are you okay? Do you need help? Something about the woman's genuine concern broke through Simone's defenses. Tears started flowing before she could stop them. I'm fine, just going through a difficult time. The woman, who introduced herself as Monica Patterson, didn't leave. Instead, she sat on the curb next to Simone's car and listened while Simone told her everything. About Derek, about Candace, about sleeping in her car and the new job that wouldn't start for 2 more days. I have a spare room, Monica said when Simone finished. My roommate just moved out and I've been looking for someone to split rent. It's not fancy, but it's clean and safe. You could move in tonight if you want. I can't afford rent right now. I spent almost everything on work boots. Pay me when you can. First month is free, just help with groceries and utilities when your job starts. Monica stood up and brushed off her jeans. Come on, you can't keep sleeping in your car. It's not safe. Simone hesitated for only a second before accepting. Thank you. I don't know how to repay you. You don't need to repay kindness. You just pass it forward when you can. Monica's apartment was a small 2-bedroom in a converted house 20 minutes from downtown. The spare room had a bed, a dresser, and a window that overlooked a garden. To Simone, it looked like paradise. That night, sleeping in a real bed for the first time in 5 days, Simone cried until she had no tears left. But these weren't tears of despair anymore. They were tears of gratitude and the first small glimmer of hope that maybe, somehow, she'd survive this. Her new job started Monday night. The work was exhausting, scrubbing toilets and mopping floors in a downtown office complex, but Simone threw herself into it. She needed the distraction, needed to be too tired to think about Derek and Candace. 2 weeks into her new routine, Simone received an email that would change everything. It was from a law firm, Patterson and Associates. The subject line read, "Urgent matter regarding estate of Eloise Washington." Eloise Washington was Simone's grandmother, her father's mother. She died 8 months ago, right before Simone's birthday. Simone had attended the small funeral in Charleston, where her grandmother had lived alone in a modest house. There hadn't been much to settle. Eloise had been a quiet woman who'd worked as a seamstress her whole life. The email requested Simone's presence at their office for a reading of the will. It seemed strange since Simone had assumed everything had been handled months ago. But the email was insistent, mentioning significant assets and time-sensitive matters. Simone called the number listed. A secretary answered and scheduled her for Friday afternoon. "What is this about?" Simone asked. "My grandmother didn't have much." "I'm not at liberty to discuss details over the phone. Mr. Harrison will explain everything on Friday. Please bring 2 forms of identification." Simone hung up, confused but curious. She told Monica about the appointment that evening over microwaved leftovers. "Maybe she had a life insurance policy or something," Monica suggested. "Could be a few $1,000s. That would help you get back on your feet." Maybe. Simone tried not to get her hopes up. Her grandmother had been kind but never wealthy. The most valuable thing she'd owned was probably her sewing machine. But on Friday afternoon, as Simone sat in the sleek downtown office of Patterson and Associates, she realized she'd been very, very wrong about her grandmother. The law offices of Patterson and Associates occupied the entire 40th floor of a glass tower in downtown Atlanta. Simone had never been in a building this expensive before. The receptionist offered her water, coffee, or tea in bone china cups. Abstract art worth more than Simone's car hung on every wall. Mr. Harrison turned out to be a distinguished man in his 50s with silver hair and kind eyes. He greeted Simone warmly, shaking her hand with both of his. "Miss Washington, thank you for coming. I apologize for the delay in contacting you. Your grandmother's estate has taken months to properly assess and organize." "I don't understand," My grandmother was a seamstress. She lived very simply. Mr. Harrison smiled. Your grandmother was indeed a seamstress, but that was only part of her story. Please sit down. What I'm about to tell you will be shocking. Simone sat in a leather chair that probably cost more than a month's rent. Mr. Harrison opened a thick folder and pulled out several documents. Eloise Washington built one of the largest private real estate empires in North America over the past 40 years. She owned properties in 32 states and 7 countries. Shopping centers, apartment complexes, office buildings, warehouses, and development projects. Her portfolio is currently valued at approximately $700 billion. The number was so large it didn't seem real. Simone stared at Mr. Harrison, waiting for him to laugh or admit this was a mistake, but he simply pulled out more papers. Your grandmother was an extraordinarily private person. She continued working as a seamstress her entire life because she loved it, not because she needed the money. She lived modestly by choice, preferring to invest everything back into her properties and charitable foundations. This can't be right, I would have known. My father would have known. Your grandmother never told anyone, including your father. She wanted to build something that would protect her family for generations, but she didn't want money to corrupt or complicate relationships while she was alive. Mr. Harrison slid a document across the desk. You are her sole heir, Miss Washington. Everything belongs to you now. Simone's hands shook as she picked up the document. It was a summary of assets, page after page of properties and investments. The numbers blurred together until she couldn't process them anymore. I don't know anything about real estate. I can't manage this. Your grandmother anticipated that. She left very specific instructions. Mr. Harrison pulled out another document. She arranged for Dominic to serve as your advisor and mentor. He was her business partner for the last 15 years and knows the empire intimately. Who? Dominic is one of the top real estate developers in the country. He and your grandmother worked together on dozens of projects. He's agreed to help you learn the business at no charge. It was your grandmother's final wish. Simone's mind spun with information she couldn't quite grasp. Why didn't she tell me about any of this before she died? Mr. Harrison's expression softened. She left you a letter. I was instructed to give it to you only after you'd accepted the inheritance. He paused. The question is, Miss Washington, do you accept? This is a massive responsibility, but it's also an incredible opportunity. You have the power to refuse the inheritance if you feel it's too much. Simone thought about her car, her cleaning job, the apartment she shared with Monica. She thought about Derek and Candace in the apartment that used to be her home. She thought about the years she'd spent making herself small, depending on someone else, letting fear keep her from reaching for more. I accept, she said firmly, and I want to meet Mr. Castellano as soon as possible. I'm ready to learn everything. Mr. Harrison smiled broadly. Excellent. I'll arrange a meeting for Monday morning. In the meantime, I'll need you to sign several documents and set up access to your accounts. He pulled out his phone. I'm also going to recommend a personal assistant and a financial advisor. You'll need a team to help manage everything. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of signatures and explanations. Mr. Harrison explained that her grandmother had set up trusts and foundations to handle the day-to-day operations of most properties. Simone wouldn't need to understand everything immediately, but she would need to learn enough to make informed decisions about the empire's direction. One more thing, Mr. Harrison said as Simone prepared to leave. Your grandmother included a clause in her will about discretion. She requested that you not make public announcements about your inheritance until you've had time to adjust and learn the business. The media attention can be overwhelming. I understand. Mr. Harrison walked her to the elevator. Your grandmother was a remarkable woman, Miss Washington. She built all of this from absolutely nothing, starting with a single duplex she bought with her seamstress earnings. She believed you had that same strength and determination. I'm looking forward to watching you prove her right. As Simone rode the elevator down 40 floors, she felt like she was floating. Nothing seemed real. Just 3 weeks ago, she'd been sleeping in her car. Now she owned $700 billion in real estate. She drove back to Monica's apartment in a daze. Monica was in the kitchen making dinner when Simone walked in. How'd it go? Did she leave you anything? Simone sat down at the kitchen table, still trying to process everything. She left me everything. Properties, investments, businesses, it's worth. It's worth $700 billion. Monica dropped the spoon she was holding. What? My grandmother secretly built a real estate empire, and she left all of it to me. Simone started laughing, a slightly hysterical sound. I was cleaning toilets this morning, and now I'm apparently one of the richest people in the world. Monica sat down across from her, eyes wide. That's insane. That's absolutely insane. Then she grinned. Does this mean you're moving out? Eventually, probably, but not yet. I need time to figure this out. Simone reached across the table and took Monica's hand. Thank you for helping me when I had nothing. I won't forget that. You would have done the same for me, Monica said simply. That night, Simone lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her mind racing with possibilities and fears. She had resources now, more than she'd ever imagined. But she also had a massive responsibility. Her grandmother had trusted her with a legacy built over 40 years of hard work. On Monday, she would meet Dominic Castellano and begin learning how to manage her inheritance. For now, she let herself feel something she hadn't felt in months. Hoping. What would you do if you suddenly inherited $700 billion? Comment below, and don't forget to subscribe to see how Simone handles her new empire. Dominic Castellano's office occupied the top 3 floors of the Castellano Tower, a gleaming structure of steel and glass that dominated Atlanta's skyline. Simone arrived 15 minutes early on Monday morning, wearing the only professional outfit she owned, a navy dress she'd bought at a thrift store for job interviews. The receptionist, a polished woman in her 30s, greeted Simone with a warm smile. Miss Washington, Mr. Castellano is expecting you. Please follow me. They rode a private elevator to the 45th floor. The doors opened directly into Dominic's office, a massive space with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of the city. Modern furniture in cream and gray created distinct areas for meetings, work, and relaxation. Dominic stood from behind his desk as Simone entered. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair just starting to gray at the temples. He wore a charcoal suit that fit perfectly, and when he smiled, his whole face transformed from intimidating to welcoming. Simone Washington. He crossed the room with his hand extended. I'm Dominic Castellano. Your grandmother was one of my dearest friends and most trusted partners. I'm honored to help you continue her legacy. His handshake was firm but not aggressive. Simone felt some of her nervousness ease. Thank you for meeting with me. Mr. Harrison said you knew my grandmother well. I did. Alois was brilliant, determined, and kind. She taught me as much as I taught her over the years. Dominic gestured to a sitting area near the windows. Please, let's talk comfortably. Can I get you anything? Coffee, tea, water? Water would be great. Within seconds, an assistant appeared with sparkling water in crystal glasses. Dominic waited until she left before continuing. I imagine you're overwhelmed. 3 weeks ago, you had no idea this world existed. Now you're sitting here trying to figure out how to manage an empire worth more than most countries' GDP. He leaned forward, his expression serious but not unkind. I want you to know something important. Your grandmother didn't leave this to you by accident. She watched you your whole life. She saw your strength, your resilience, your ability to adapt. She knew you could handle this. I don't feel very strong right now. Strength isn't the absence of fear or doubt. It's moving forward despite those things. Dominic pulled out a tablet and opened it to a document. Your grandmother left very specific instructions for your training. She wanted me to teach you everything, starting with the basics and building up to complex negotiations and development decisions. If you're willing to commit to learning, I'm willing to commit to teaching. What does that involve? For the next 6 months, you'll work with me daily. We'll start with understanding your current portfolio, then move into property management, development strategies, market analysis, and eventually deal making. You'll shadow me in meetings, review contracts, and make small decisions under guidance before tackling bigger ones. Simone absorbed this information. 6 months of intensive training felt both overwhelming and necessary. What do you get out of this? Mr. Harrison said you're doing this for free. Dominic smiled. Your grandmother and I had an agreement. She helped me when I was starting out, gave me opportunities I wouldn't have had otherwise. This is me honoring that friendship. Plus, I'm genuinely interested in seeing what you'll do with this empire. Fresh perspectives often lead to innovation. When do we start? Right now, if you're ready. Dominic stood and walked to his desk, returning with a thick binder. This is a summary of your top 50 properties. We'll go through each one today so you understand what you own and how it generates revenue. They spent the next 4 hours reviewing properties. Shopping centers in California, apartment complexes in New York, office buildings in London, warehouses in Texas. Each property had detailed financials showing rental income, expenses, and profit margins. Dominic explained everything patiently, never making Simone feel stupid for asking questions. Your grandmother's strategy was simple but effective, he explained during their lunch break. An assistant had brought in salads and sandwiches. She bought undervalued properties in emerging markets, improved them, and held them long-term. She rarely sold anything. Instead, she used rental income to fund new purchases and developments. How did she start with so little and build all this? Hard work, smart decisions, and patience. She bought her first property, a duplex, with money she'd saved from seamstress work. She lived in one unit and rented the other. The rental income covered her mortgage and living expenses. She saved everything else and bought a second property within 2 years, then a third. By the time she'd been investing for 10 years, she owned 30 properties and was making serious money. Simone felt a connection to her grandmother she'd never experienced when Alois was alive. I wish I'd known about this while she was here. I have so many questions. She left journals, detailed records of every decision she made, every lesson she learned, every mistake that taught her something valuable. Mr. Harrison will give them to you when you're ready. Dominic checked his watch. We have a property walkthrough scheduled for 3 o'clock. One of your apartment complexes here in Atlanta. I want you to see firsthand how property management works. The apartment complex was in Midtown, a renovated building with 200 units. The property manager, a competent woman named Janet Torres, gave them a complete tour. She explained occupancy rates, maintenance schedules, tenant relations, and renovation plans. We're currently at 97% occupancy, Janet said as they walked through the landscaped courtyard. We have a waiting list of 50 people. Rent is competitive for the area, and we offer amenities other buildings don't have. Simone asked questions about everything. How did they screen tenants? What happened when someone couldn't pay rent? How did they handle maintenance emergencies? Janet answered each question thoroughly, clearly pleased by Simone's genuine interest. After the tour, Dominic drove Simone back to his office. They sat in his car for a moment before she got out. You did well today, he said. You asked good questions and absorbed information quickly. This is going to work. I'm terrified I'll make a mistake and ruin everything my grandmother built. You will make mistakes. Everyone does. The key is making small mistakes you can learn from, not catastrophic ones that destroy value. Dominic pulled out a business card and handed it to her. This is my personal number. Call or text anytime you have questions or concerns. I mean that. 2 in the morning, Sunday afternoon doesn't matter. This is your business now, and I'm committed to helping you succeed." Simone took the card, grateful for his support. "Thank you for all of this." "Thank your grandmother, she set this up perfectly," he smiled. "Same time tomorrow, we'll go over development projects and future investments." Simone agreed and drove back to Monica's apartment feeling exhausted but energized. She'd spent the day learning about a world she'd never known existed, and instead of feeling lost, she felt curious. That night she researched Dominic Castellano online. He was 38, never married, and had built his own development company from the ground up starting at age 23. Articles praised his innovative designs and commitment to sustainable development. Photos showed him at charity events and business conferences, always professional, always confident. One article from 5 years ago caught her attention. It mentioned his partnership with an anonymous investor on a major development in Miami. That anonymous investor, Simone now realized, had been her grandmother. As she fell asleep, Simone thought about the strange turns her life had taken. A month ago, she'd been married and comfortable but stagnant. Now she was single, wealthy beyond imagination, and learning skills she'd never dreamed of having. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in years, she was excited to find out. Over the next 2 months, Simone immersed herself in learning everything about real estate development and property management. She arrived at Dominic's office every morning at 8 and rarely left before 6. Her days consisted of meetings with property managers, reviewing development proposals, analyzing market trends, and studying her grandmother's detailed journals. The journals were revelatory. Alois had documented 40 years of business decisions in neat handwriting, explaining not just what she'd done but why. She wrote about failed investments and the lessons they taught. She described difficult negotiations and how she'd learned to stand firm. She detailed her philosophy of building wealth slowly and sustainably rather than chasing quick profits. "Your grandmother was patient in a way most investors aren't," Dominic said one afternoon as they reviewed a proposal for a new shopping center in Phoenix. She'd walk away from deals that didn't meet her strict criteria, even when everyone else thought she was crazy. That discipline is why her portfolio is so strong. Simone studied the Phoenix proposal, applying the evaluation framework Dominic had taught her. Location, demographics, competition, development costs, projected returns. The numbers look good, but the timeline seems aggressive. 18 months from groundbreaking to opening for a 300,000 square foot complex. Exactly, what would you do? Request a revised timeline with built-in buffers for delays. Better to underpromise and overdeliver than the reverse. Dominic grinned. "You're learning. 3 months ago you wouldn't have caught that." Janet Torres, who'd become Simone's assistant at Dominic's suggestion, brought in afternoon coffee. She'd worked in property management for 15 years and knew the business inside and out. Simone had hesitated to hire her at first, uncomfortable with having someone work for her, but Dominic had been firm. "You can't manage a $700 billion empire alone. Building a good team isn't weakness, it's smart business." He'd introduced her to Janet and 3 other professionals who now formed Simone's core team. Simone had accepted his advice gratefully, and Janet had proven invaluable. She anticipated Simone's needs, organized her schedule efficiently, and offered insights from years of hands-on experience. "The Denver property manager called," Janet said now, setting down the coffee. "The roof repair is complete and came in under budget. They're requesting approval to use the savings for courtyard landscaping upgrades." "Approved," Simone said without hesitation. "Better landscaping improves tenant satisfaction and property value." After Janet left, Dominic leaned back in his chair, studying Simone. "You're making faster progress than I expected. Your grandmother would be proud." "I'm just trying to honor what she built." "You're doing more than that, you're making it your own." He pulled up a document on his computer, which brings me to our next topic, your first major decision. Simone's pulse quickened. For 2 months, she'd been learning and observing but not making significant independent choices. What kind of decision? A development opportunity in Charleston. A mixed-use project combining residential, retail, and office space in a revitalizing neighborhood. Initial investment of $250 million with projected returns of 18% annually once fully leased. He turned the monitor so Simone could see the detailed proposal. She spent 30 minutes reviewing everything, asking questions, checking the numbers against what she'd learned. The project met all her grandmother's criteria. Good location, strong demographics, experienced development team, conservative but solid projections. "What do you think?" Dominic asked. "I think we should do it." Simone felt a surge of confidence. The numbers work, the team is solid, and Charleston's market fundamentals are strong. My grandmother's journals mentioned Charleston several times. She believed in that city's long-term growth potential. "Then make the decision. This is your empire now." Simone took a deep breath. "I approve the project. Let's move forward." Dominic smiled, genuine warmth in his expression. "Congratulations. You just made your first $250 million decision." The magnitude of it hit Simone all at once. She just committed $250 million to a development project. If it failed, that was money lost. But if it succeeded, it would generate wealth for decades and provide homes and jobs for hundreds of people. "I need air," she said, standing abruptly. Dominic didn't question it. He simply followed her to the private terrace attached to his office. The evening air was cool, and the city spread out below them in a grid of lights and movement. "Feeling overwhelmed?" he asked gently. "Yes, but also exhilarated. Is that normal?" "Completely normal. Big decisions create big emotions." He leaned against the railing beside her. "You made the right call, by the way. I've reviewed that proposal 3 times. It's solid." They stood in comfortable silence for several minutes. Simone had grown to appreciate Dominic's steady presence over the past 2 months. He pushed her to learn but never made her feel incapable. He offered guidance without controlling her decisions, and he treated her like an equal partner despite his years of experience. "Can I ask you something personal?" Simone said. "Of course." "Why have you never married?" Dominic smiled. "Direct question, I like that." He considered his answer carefully. "I've been focused on building my business for the last 15 years. The women I dated wanted more time and attention than I could give while growing a company. Eventually, I realized I was being unfair to them and to myself, so I stopped dating seriously and concentrated on work." "Do you regret that?" "Sometimes, but I believe the right person shows up at the right time. I wasn't ready before." He glanced at her. "What about you? Mr. Harrison mentioned you were recently divorced." Simone hadn't talked about Derek in weeks. The pain had dulled to a distant ache. "My ex-husband left me for my best friend, or who I thought was my best friend. He kicked me out with 1 suitcase and $800 to my name." "That's why you were sleeping in your car when your grandmother's lawyer contacted you." "How did you know that?" "Your grandmother asked me to keep an eye on you from a distance after she got sick. I knew about the divorce, knew Derek had left you with nothing. It killed me not to step in and help, but your grandmother made me promise not to interfere until after her will was read. She said you needed to feel the full weight of your situation so you'd appreciate the inheritance properly." Simone processed this revelation. "You watched me struggle and did nothing." "I followed your grandmother's explicit instructions, yes. She was very specific about the timing." Dominic's expression turned regretful. "For what it's worth, it was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Watching you sleep in your car, seeing you take that cleaning job, knowing I could have helped but couldn't." Simone understood her grandmother's reasoning, even if it had been painful. "She wanted me to hit bottom so I'd know I could survive anything." Exactly, and you did survive. You found housing, got a job, kept moving forward. That resilience is why she trusted you with everything. They returned inside as the sky darkened. Dominic walked Simone to the elevator. "Same time tomorrow?" he asked. "Actually, I was hoping we could start earlier. 7 instead of 8. I want to learn as much as possible." Dominic's smile was approving. "7 it is. We'll go over acquisition strategies and market analysis." As Simone drove to Monica's apartment, she felt the weight of her new responsibilities settling more comfortably on her shoulders. She was learning, growing, becoming the person her grandmother had believed she could be. Monica was waiting with Chinese takeout when Simone arrived. Over spring rolls and lo mein, Simone told her about the Charleston decision. $250 million, Monica repeated, shaking her head. "I can't even imagine numbers that big." "Neither could I 3 months ago." Simone set down her chopsticks. "Monica, I want to do something for you. You saved my life when I had nothing. Let me buy you a house, or a car, or pay off your student loans, something." Monica smiled but shook her head. "I didn't help you expecting repayment, but I appreciate the offer. There must be something you want or need." "Honestly, I'm happy with my life. I have a job I like, an apartment I can afford, good friends. That's enough for me." Monica squeezed Simone's hand. "But here's what you can do. Remember this feeling of wanting to help someone who helped you. Then go help other people the way you wish someone had helped you when you were sleeping in your car." Simone realized Monica was right. Her wealth gave her the power to make a real difference in people's lives. That was the legacy her grandmother had left her, not just money but the ability to help others. Over the following weeks, Simone threw herself into learning everything she could. She reviewed every property in her portfolio, met with every senior manager, and studied market trends across multiple sectors and regions. She made her second major decision, approving a $180 million renovation of an aging shopping center in Los Angeles. Dominic continued guiding her, but he began stepping back, letting her take the lead in meetings and negotiations. Simone discovered she had an instinct for the business, an ability to read situations and people that served her well. One Friday evening, after a particularly long day of back-to-back meetings, Dominic suggested they grab dinner to discuss a new opportunity. They went to a quiet Italian restaurant where the owner greeted Dominic by name. Over pasta and wine, they talked about a potential development in Miami, a luxury residential tower with ocean views. But the conversation eventually drifted to more personal topics. "You've changed in the 3 months I've known you," Dominic observed. "You're more confident, more decisive." "I'm learning from the best." Simone meant it sincerely. "Your grandmother would be thrilled with your progress. She always said you had untapped potential." "I wish I'd known her better. Really known her, not just as my quiet grandmother who sewed dresses." "She was protecting you by keeping her business life separate. She saw how money corrupted other families and didn't want that for you." Dominic paused. "But she left you something else besides the journals. A letter. Mr. Harrison has it. She wanted you to receive it after you'd been learning the business for at least 3 months." Simone's throat tightened. "I can get it now." "You've more than earned it. Call Mr. Harrison on Monday." They finished dinner and Dominic drove Simone back to Monica's apartment. As she got out of the car, he caught her hand. "You've exceeded every expectation, Simone. Your grandmother chose well." Simone felt warmth spread through her chest at his words and the gentle pressure of his hand on hers. She squeezed back before releasing him. "Thank you for everything. I couldn't have done any of this without you." As she walked into the apartment, Simone realized her feelings for Dominic were shifting from professional respect to something deeper. But she pushed the thought aside. She had too much to learn, too many responsibilities to handle romantic complications. Still, as she lay in bed that night, she couldn't stop thinking about the way he'd looked at her across the dinner table, or the warmth in his voice when he praised her progress. 3.5 months after inheriting her grandmother's empire, Simone's life had transformed completely. She'd moved into a penthouse apartment in Buckhead, hired a full staff including Janet as her executive assistant, and made several successful investment decisions that had increased her portfolio's value by $12 billion. The news coverage had been inevitable despite her attempts at discretion. Business journals ran features about the mysterious heiress of the Washington real estate empire. Photos of Simone attending charity galas and business conferences appeared in society pages. Her name trended on social media when she announced a $500 million affordable housing initiative in underserved communities. She'd known it was only a matter of time before Derek found out. It happened on a Tuesday morning. Simone was in her office reviewing proposals when Janet buzzed her intercom. "There's a Derek Morrison here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment, but he's insisting it's urgent." Simone's stomach dropped. She hadn't spoken to Derek since the day he'd kicked her out. "Tell security to escort him out." "He's saying he's your husband." "Well, ex-husband, should I call the police?" Simone took a deep breath, steadying herself. She'd come too far to let Derek rattle her now. "No, it's fine. Send him in, but have security stand by just in case." Derek walked into her office looking exactly as she remembered. Same expensive suit, same confident stride, same handsome face that had once made her heart race. But now, looking at him, she felt nothing but mild curiosity about what he wanted. "Simone." He stopped in the middle of her office, taking in the floor-to-ceiling windows, the modern furniture, the obvious wealth. "This is incredible. I saw the news coverage, but seeing it in person is something else." "What do you want, Derek?" He moved closer, his expression shifting to something meant to look contrite. "I made a terrible mistake. Leaving you was the worst decision of my life. I've missed you every single day." Simone leaned back in her leather chair, studying him with the analytical eye she'd developed over months of negotiation training. "You've missed me, or you've missed what you thought I could never have." "Both. I mean neither. I mean—" Derek ran his hand through his hair, a gesture she'd once found endearing. "I genuinely miss you, Simone. What we had was special. I was an idiot to throw it away for Candace." "How is Candace?" "We're not together anymore. Turns out we had nothing in common except wanting to hurt you. Once we didn't have that, the relationship fell apart." He moved to the edge of her desk. "I want you back. We can start over, do it right this time." Simone almost laughed. "You kicked me out with one suitcase and $800. You told me you'd stopped loving me a long time ago. You moved my best friend into our apartment before I'd even signed the divorce papers. And now you want to start over." "I know I hurt you, but people make mistakes. We were married for 7 years. Doesn't that mean anything?" "It did, past tense." Simone stood, straightening her designer suit. "I'm not interested in reconciliation, Derek. I've moved on completely." His expression hardened. "Is this about money? Because I never cared about that. I loved you when you had nothing." "No, you loved having someone who depended on you completely, someone you could control. The moment I stopped fitting that role, you left." Simone pressed a button on her desk phone. "Janet, please have security escort Mr. Morrison out." Derek's mask slipped, revealing anger underneath. "You're making a mistake. You'll never find someone who knows you like I do." "You're right. I'll never find someone who treated me the way you did. Thank God for that." 2 security guards appeared in the doorway. Derek looked at them, then back at Simone, seeming to realize his approach wasn't working. "Fine, but when you're lonely in this big office with all this money and no one to share it with, remember I was willing to give us another chance." "I'll keep that in mind." Simone's voice was cool. "Goodbye, Derek." The security guards escorted him out. Simone waited until the door closed before sitting back down, surprised to find her hands were shaking. Not from fear or sadness, but from suppressed anger at Derek's presumption. Janet appeared minutes later with tea. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine, better than fine, actually." Simone sipped the tea, feeling her composure return. That was closure I didn't even know I needed. That evening, Simone had dinner with Dominic at his penthouse. They'd started having working dinners several times a week, ostensibly to discuss business, but increasingly just to enjoy each other's company. She told him about Derek's visit, while they ate the meal his private chef had prepared. "How did it feel seeing him?" Dominic asked. "Like looking at a stranger, someone I used to know but don't anymore." Simone set down her wine glass. "He thought I'd take him back because he apologized. Like the last 4 months of my life, all this growth and change. Didn't matter." "Do you regret not giving him a second chance?" "Not even a little bit. Derek represented everything I've moved beyond. Dependence, insecurity, making myself smaller to fit someone else's expectations." She met Dominic's eyes. "I'm not that person anymore." "No, you're definitely not." Dominic's gaze was warm, almost tender. "You're remarkable, Simone. The transformation you've undergone in 4 months is extraordinary." They moved to the terrace after dinner, looking out over the city lights. Simone felt completely comfortable with Dominic in a way she'd never felt with Derek. There was no pretense, no need to perform or please. She could be herself, ambitious and uncertain and learning, and he valued all of it. "Can I tell you something?" Dominic said quietly. "Of course. I admired you even before you knew about your inheritance. Your grandmother showed me photos over the years, told me stories about your kindness and resilience. When she got sick, she made me promise to watch over you from a distance. Those weeks when you were struggling, sleeping in your car, I saw your strength firsthand. You didn't give up. You kept moving forward." Simone's breath caught. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I want you to know that my respect and admiration for you has nothing to do with your wealth. You're impressive because of who you are, not what you have." They stood close together in the evening air, and Simone felt the pull of something deeper than friendship or mentorship. But before she could respond, Dominic's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and grimaced. "I have to take this. Emergency with a project in Seattle." He answered as he walked inside, leaving Simone alone with her thoughts. When she got home that night, she found Monica waiting with a bottle of wine. "I heard Derek showed up at your office. How are you?" "I'm good, really good, actually." Simone kicked off her heels and curled up on the couch. "Seeing him made me realize how far I've come. The person who married him doesn't exist anymore." "You've definitely changed, more confident, more self-assured." Monica poured them both wine. "And you're happy. I can see it in your eyes." "I am happy. For the first time in years, I'm excited about the future instead of just trying to get through each day." They talked late into the night about life, growth, and new beginnings. Simone went to bed feeling grateful for her journey, even the painful parts that had brought her to this point. Derek's attempt to re-enter her life had failed completely, but it had given her something valuable. Confirmation that she'd made the right choices, that moving forward was infinitely better than looking back. Still following Simone's journey? Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what happens next. The best part is coming, I promise. The Charleston Development Project broke ground on a crisp October morning. Simone stood at the construction site wearing a hard hat and safety vest, holding a ceremonial shovel for the traditional first dig photo opportunity. Local politicians, business leaders, and media representatives had gathered for the event. "This project represents more than buildings," Simone told the crowd, reading from notes she'd prepared with Janet's help. "It represents opportunity. Jobs during construction, homes for families, spaces for local businesses to grow. My grandmother taught me that real estate isn't just about profit, it's about building communities." The crowd applauded. Cameras flashed. Simone smiled and posed for photos, but inside she felt the familiar flutter of nerves. Public speaking still challenged her, though she'd gotten better with practice. Dominic stood off to the side, watching with obvious pride. After the ceremony, he joined her for the site walkthrough with the construction manager. "You did well with the speech," he said as they examined the foundation plans. "I was terrified the whole time." "It didn't show. You looked completely in control." Dominic pointed to the blueprints. "The construction timeline is aggressive but achievable. We should see vertical progress within 3 months." Over the following weeks, Simone made a series of strategic decisions that strengthened her portfolio. She approved a $95 million acquisition of undervalued office buildings in Chicago. She greenlit a major renovation of a historic hotel in San Francisco. She established a $200 million fund specifically for sustainable development projects. Each decision came easier than the last. She developed an instinct for the business, an ability to evaluate opportunities quickly and accurately. Her team respected her judgment, and other developers in the industry were starting to take her seriously. "You've arrived," Janet told her one afternoon after a particularly successful negotiation. "That developer practically begged you to partner with him on the Austin project." Simone smiled at the memory. 6 months ago, she wouldn't have had the confidence to negotiate terms. Now she'd driven a hard bargain and gotten everything she wanted. "I'm learning." "You're thriving, there's a difference." That evening, Simone attended the annual Real Estate Excellence Gala, one of the industry's most prestigious events. She wore a midnight blue gown that cost more than her car used to be worth and walked into the ballroom with her head high. People stared, whispered. She'd expected that. The mysterious heiress who'd appeared seemingly out of nowhere and was now making waves with aggressive but smart investments. Dominic met her at the entrance, stunning in a black tuxedo. He offered his arm. "Ready to face the wolves?" "As ready as I'll ever be." They moved through the crowd together, Dominic making introductions and running interference when conversations turned intrusive. Simone met developers, investors, city planners, and philanthropists. She answered questions about her plans, her vision, her grandmother's legacy. Halfway through the evening, a man in his 60s approached. "Miss Washington, I'm Thomas Chen. I knew your grandmother well." Simone shook his hand warmly. "She mentioned you in her journals. You partnered on several projects in the 90s. She was brilliant, ahead of her time in many ways." Thomas studied Simone with sharp eyes. "I hear you're following in her footsteps quite successfully." "I'm trying to honor what she built while making it my own." "Smart answer. Your grandmother would approve." Thomas glanced at Dominic. "Castellano is a good mentor. Listen to him, but trust your own instincts too." After Thomas moved on, Dominic leaned close. "That was high praise. Thomas doesn't compliment people easily." The evening continued with dinner, speeches, and awards. Simone found herself enjoying the event more than she'd expected. These were her peers now, people who understood the world she'd entered. During the dancing portion of the evening, Dominic asked Simone to dance. She hesitated, aware that people would notice and speculate, but accepted his offered hand. They moved together easily, naturally. Dominic was an excellent dancer, confident but not showy. Simone followed his lead, aware of his hand on her waist, the warmth of his body close to hers. "You're thinking too hard," he murmured. "Just relax and feel the music." She tried, letting her body move instinctively rather than overthinking each step. It worked. They glided across the floor, and for a few minutes, Simone forgot about the watching crowd and just enjoyed the moment. When the song ended, Dominic held her gaze for a long moment before stepping back. "Thank you for the dance." Simone's heart was beating faster than the dancing warranted. "Thank you for asking." They stayed at the gala until nearly midnight, then Dominic drove Simone home in his sports car. The city was quiet, most people already asleep. "I had a good time tonight," Simone said as they pulled up to her building. "So did I. You were the most impressive person in that room." "That's not true." It is to me. Dominic turned to face her, his expression serious. Simone, I need to tell you something. I've been trying to maintain appropriate boundaries because of our professional relationship, but I can't pretend anymore. I have feelings for you, real feelings that go beyond mentorship or friendship. Simone's breath caught. She'd suspected, hoped even, but hearing him say it out loud changed everything. I have feelings for you too, she admitted. I have for weeks now. Dominic reached across and took her hand. I didn't want to complicate your life while you were still learning the business, and I didn't want you to think my help came with strings attached, but you don't need my help anymore. You're fully capable of running your empire. So what are you saying? I'm saying I'd like to take you to dinner tomorrow night. A real date, not a working dinner, just us. Getting to know each other outside of business. Simone smiled, feeling a rush of happiness. I'd like that very much. They set a time, then Simone reluctantly got out of the car. She watched Dominic drive away before heading up to her penthouse, her mind spinning with this new development. Monica called before Simone could even take off her gown. How was the gala? Dominic asked me out, a real date. Monica squealed. Finally, I've been waiting for you two to figure out what everyone else could already see. Was it that obvious? Extremely. The man looks at you like you hung the moon. Simone changed out of her gown and into comfortable pajamas, but she was too excited to sleep. She stood at her floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out over the city she was learning to navigate both professionally and personally. 6 months ago, she'd been broken and lost, sleeping in her car with no future in sight. Now she had an empire, a purpose, friends who cared about her, and the promise of romance with someone she genuinely respected and admired. Life had a strange way of working out, she thought. Sometimes the worst moments led to the best opportunities. Sometimes losing everything cleared the path for gaining something better. She thought about her grandmother, building this empire one property at a time, keeping it secret until Simone was ready to receive it. Alois had known exactly what she was doing, creating not just wealth but a legacy of strength and independence. Thank you, Simone whispered to her grandmother's memory, for everything. Their first official date was at a small French restaurant Dominic knew, tucked away in a quiet neighborhood far from the usual society haunts. He picked Simone up at 7, looking relaxed in dark jeans and a crisp white shirt. You look beautiful, he said when she answered the door in a simple green dress. You clean up nicely yourself. The restaurant was intimate, maybe 12 tables total, with soft lighting and quiet music. The owner greeted Dominic by name and showed them to a corner table with privacy. I wanted somewhere we could actually talk without interruption, Dominic explained. I hope this is okay. It's perfect. They ordered wine and appetizers, then settled into conversation that flowed easily. Without the pressure of business discussions or professional boundaries, they discovered shared interests and compatible personalities. Dominic told her about growing up in a working-class neighborhood in Boston, how his father had been a construction worker and his mother a teacher. He'd put himself through college working 2 jobs, then started his development company with borrowed money and stubborn determination. Your grandmother gave me my first major opportunity, he said. I was 28 and trying to get financing for a small apartment renovation. Every bank had turned me down, but Alois saw my plans and believed in my vision. She provided the funding in exchange for a partnership stake. That project's success launched my career. She had an eye for potential, Simone said. She did, with properties and with people. Dominic reached across the table and took her hand. She told me about you years ago, showed me photos, shared stories about your kindness and resilience. I think part of her plan all along was for us to meet. Playing matchmaker from beyond the grave. Something like that, though I'd like to think we would have found each other eventually anyway. They talked through dinner and dessert. the conversation ranging from childhood memories to future dreams. Simone found herself sharing things she'd never told anyone, including her fears about being adequate to her inheritance and her determination to prove herself worthy of her grandmother's trust. "You've already proven yourself," Dominic assured her, "every day with every decision you make." After dinner, they walked through a nearby park, enjoying the cool evening air. Dominic held her hand, and Simone felt completely at ease. "I need to tell you something else," Dominic said as they sat on a bench overlooking a small pond. "Something I should have mentioned before." Simone tensed slightly. "What?" "I convinced your grandmother to leave everything to you." "What do you mean?" "About 2 years ago, Alois was considering splitting her estate between several charities and distant relatives. You would have received something, but not everything. I argued that you were the right person to continue her legacy. I told her what I'd observed about your character, your strength, your potential." Dominic met her eyes. "She trusted my judgment and changed her will." Simone absorbed this information. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I want complete honesty between us, and because I want you to know that my interest in you started long before you inherited anything. I saw who you were when you had nothing, and that's the person I fell for." Simone kissed him then, unable to hold back any longer. It was gentle at first, tentative, but quickly deepened into something that left them both breathless. When they pulled apart, Dominic smiled. "I've wanted to do that for months." "So have I." They stayed in the park until late, talking and kissing, and simply being together without the weight of business concerns. When Dominic finally drove her home, Simone felt happier than she could remember being in years. Over the following weeks, their relationship developed alongside their professional partnership. They were careful to maintain appropriate boundaries at work, but outside the office, they spent nearly every evening together. Dominic took her to art galleries and concerts. They went hiking in the mountains north of Atlanta. They cooked dinner together in his penthouse, laughing over her lack of culinary skills and his patient attempts to teach her. Simone discovered aspects of Dominic she hadn't seen in their business interactions. His dry sense of humor, his love of old movies, his surprising talent for playing piano. He was tender and patient, never pushing her to move faster than she was comfortable with. "I'm in love with you," he told her one evening as they sat on his terrace watching the sunset. "I know it's only been a few weeks, but I'm certain." Simone's heart swelled. "I love you too. I think I have for a while now." They made love that night for the first time, and it was everything Simone had hoped for. Gentle and passionate, patient and intense. Afterward, lying in Dominic's arms, she felt a completeness she'd never experienced with Derek. This was what partnership was supposed to feel like. Two equals choosing each other, supporting each other, growing together. Business continued to flourish. The Charleston project was ahead of schedule. The Chicago acquisition was already generating 15% higher returns than projected. Simone's reputation in the industry continued to grow. She also began implementing more of her own vision, separate from her grandmother's established portfolio. She created an initiative to build affordable housing in underserved communities. She invested in sustainable technology that would make her buildings more energy efficient. She established scholarships for students pursuing careers in real estate development. "You're not just maintaining your grandmother's legacy," Janet observed during a planning meeting. "You're expanding it in meaningful ways." Dominic agreed when Simone shared Janet's comment with him that evening. "Your grandmother would be thrilled. She always said the next generation should improve on what came before, not just preserve it." 3 months into their relationship, Dominic suggested a weekend trip to Charleston to check on the development project. They flew down Friday afternoon and spent Saturday touring the construction site. The progress was impressive. The first building's frame was complete, and work had started on interior systems. The project manager walked them through each phase, clearly proud of his team's work. "We'll be ready for the first tenant move-ins by next summer," he said. "Right on schedule." That evening, Dominic took Simone to dinner at a rooftop restaurant overlooking Charleston Harbor. The setting was romantic, with candles and soft music and a view of the water. Halfway through dinner, Dominic grew quiet. Simone noticed his hand shaking slightly as he reached for his wine glass. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I'm nervous, actually, which is ridiculous considering everything we've been through together." He set down his glass and took both her hands. "Simone, these past few months with you have been the happiest of my life. You're brilliant, kind, passionate about your work, and you make me want to be better every day." Simone's heart started racing as she realized what was happening. Dominic pulled a small box from his jacket pocket and opened it, revealing a stunning diamond ring. "I love you completely. I want to build a life with you, a family, a future. Will you marry me?" Tears filled Simone's eyes. She didn't hesitate, didn't second-guess, didn't let fear hold her back. "Yes, absolutely yes." Dominic slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into a kiss that left the other diners applauding. Simone laughed through her tears, overwhelmed with joy. "I can't believe this is my life," she said, staring at the ring on her finger. "Believe it, this is just the beginning." They called their closest friends and family that night to share the news. Monica screamed with delight. Janet sent a heartfelt congratulatory message. Even Mr. Harrison, her grandmother's attorney, called to offer his warm wishes. As Simone lay in bed that night in their Charleston hotel room, Dominic's arms around her and her engagement ring catching the moonlight, she thought about the journey that had brought her here. She'd lost everything, and in losing it she'd found herself. She'd inherited more than she could have imagined, and with it, she'd discovered her strength and purpose. She'd opened her heart to love again and found a partner who saw her completely and loved her exactly as she was. Life was full of unexpected turns, she reflected. The key was being brave enough to accept them, to say yes when opportunity knocked, to believe you were worthy of good things. Her grandmother had known that. That's why she'd built an empire and left it to Simone with the perfect mentor to guide her. Eloise had given her granddaughter not just wealth, but the confidence to claim it and use it well. "Thank you," Simone whispered again to her grandmother's memory, "for seeing in me what I couldn't see in myself." Mr. Harrison called Simone the Monday after her engagement to congratulate her and to mention something else. "Your grandmother left a final letter for you. She instructed me to give it to you only after you'd been running the business for at least 6 months and had found happiness in your personal life. I believe both conditions have been met." Simone's throat tightened. "Can I get it today?" "I'll have it messengered to your office within the hour." The envelope arrived in an elegant wooden box. Simone dismissed Janet and Dominic both, needing to read her grandmother's words alone. With shaking hands, she opened the envelope and began to read. "My dearest Simone, if you're reading this, it means you've not only accepted your inheritance but flourished with it. I'm so proud of you, sweetheart, though I won't be there to tell you in person. I've watched you your whole life, even when I seemed distant or distracted. I saw your kindness when you volunteered at the food bank every week in high school. I saw your loyalty when you stood by friends who were going through difficult times. I saw your strength when your father died and you held your mother together through her grief. I also saw your marriage to Derek, and it broke my heart. Not because Derek was terrible, but because I watched you make yourself smaller to fit his expectations. You dimmed your own light to make him comfortable. You gave up your dreams to support his. You became dependent when you were capable of so much more. I knew the marriage wouldn't last. Derek wanted a wife who would stay in his shadow, and you were never meant for shadows, darling. You were meant to shine. When Derek left you, I wanted to step in immediately. I wanted to give you this inheritance right away, to save you from the pain and struggle I knew was coming. But I didn't, and I'll tell you why. You needed to hit bottom completely. You needed to lose everything so you could discover that even with nothing, you were still enough. You needed to sleep in your car and take a job cleaning toilets so you could prove to yourself that you'd survive anything. You needed to accept help from a stranger, Monica, so you could learn that accepting help isn't weakness. Most importantly, you needed to be free of Derek before receiving this wealth. If I'd given it to you while you were married, he would have controlled it, controlled you. The inheritance would have become a prison instead of freedom. I built this empire for you, Simone. Every property, every investment, every decision I made was with you in mind. I knew you'd eventually need it, and I wanted to make sure you had the resources to build whatever life you wanted. I also made sure you'd have Dominic. He's a good man, darling, brilliant and kind, with the patience to teach and the wisdom to step back when needed. I've watched him build his own success through hard work and integrity. I knew he'd see your potential and help you reach it. If things have worked out the way I planned, you and Dominic are together now, not just as business partners but as life partners. I saw the way he looked at photos of you, the concern in his voice when I mentioned you were struggling. He fell in love with who you are, not what you have. Hold on to that man, sweetheart. He's rare and precious. Now for my final advice. Run this empire however you see fit. Change things, improve them, make them yours. Don't feel obligated to preserve my vision exactly as I left it. Each generation should build on what came before, not preserve it in amber. Use your wealth to help others. You know what it's like to have nothing, to sleep in your car, to worry about where your next meal comes from. Let that compassion guide you. Build affordable housing. Support women escaping bad situations. Fund education and opportunity. Money is just a tool, darling. Use it to make the world better. Accept help when it's offered. Accept love when it's given. You spent too many years with Derek making yourself small and self-sufficient to avoid burdening him. Don't make that mistake again. Let the people who love you support you. Let them in completely. Most importantly, believe you're worthy of all of this. Worthy of wealth, of success, of love, of happiness. You are, darling. You always have been. I hope this journey has taught you that. I love you endlessly. I'm so proud of the woman you've become. Build a beautiful life, Simone. You deserve it. All my love. Grandma Lois. Simone read the letter 3 times, crying harder with each pass. Her grandmother had orchestrated everything, from the timing of the inheritance to Dominic's involvement. Alois had known exactly what Simone needed and when she needed it. Dominic found her 20 minutes later, tears still streaming down her face. He read the letter without comment, then pulled her into his arms. "She loved you so much," he said softly. "She gave me everything, not just money but purpose and confidence, and you." Simone looked up at him. "She planned for us to be together." "The best plans work out." Dominic wiped her tears with his thumbs. "Are you okay?" "I'm more than okay. I finally understand everything. Why the inheritance came when it did, why you were there to help me, why I had to go through all that pain first." She took a shaky breath. She was teaching me that I could survive anything, that I didn't need Derek or anyone else to be complete. She was teaching me to value myself. And did you learn the lesson? I did. I am enough just as I am. The wealth is wonderful, but it doesn't define me. I define it. They spent the rest of the day together, talking about Alois's letter and what it meant. Simone shared stories about her grandmother that she'd never told anyone, memories from childhood that took on new meaning now. That evening she called Monica and read her the letter. "Your grandmother sounds like an amazing woman," Monica said when Simone finished. She was, and she was right about everything. I needed to lose Derek and hit bottom before I could truly find myself. "Are you glad it happened? All of it, even the painful parts?" Simone considered the question carefully. "Yes. If Derek hadn't left me, I'd still be in that apartment making myself small, afraid of my own shadow. I'd never have discovered what I'm capable of. I'd never have met Dominic. I'd never have found this purpose. Then maybe the pain was worth it. It was, every bit of it. Simone framed her grandmother's letter and hung it in her office where she could see it every day. It became a touchstone, a reminder of where she'd come from and what she'd learned. She also commissioned a portrait of Alois to hang beside it. Her grandmother deserved to be remembered, celebrated for the empire she'd built and the wisdom she'd shown in passing it on. Over dinner that night, Simone told Dominic about another idea she'd been developing. I want to create a foundation specifically to help women leaving difficult relationships. Emergency housing, job training, legal support, financial education. Everything I wish I'd had when Derek left me. That's brilliant. Your grandmother would love that. We could call it the Alois Washington Foundation for New Beginnings. Dominic raised his wine glass. To new beginnings and the wisdom to embrace them. Simone clinked her glass against his. To grandmothers who plan ahead and men who see potential in people others overlook. And to women brave enough to start over and build empires. They drank to all of it, to past struggles and present joy and future possibilities. Life had tested Simone in ways she'd never imagined, but she'd emerged stronger, wiser, and infinitely more capable. Her grandmother's final gift wasn't the money or the properties. It was the journey itself, the lessons learned through struggle, and the confidence gained from overcoming obstacles. Simone would spend the rest of her life honoring that gift, by helping others find their own strength, and building a legacy worthy of the woman who'd made it all possible. 6 months after Dominic's proposal, on a perfect spring day with clear blue skies and cherry blossoms in full bloom, Simone married the love of her life. The wedding took place at a restored estate in Charleston, the same city where they'd gotten engaged. 200 guests filled the gardens, including business partners, friends, family, and the key people who'd helped Simone rebuild her life. Monica served as Simone's maid of honor, standing beside her in a rose-colored gown. Janet sat in the front row, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. Mr. Harrison walked Simone down the aisle in place of her late father. Dominic waited at the altar looking stunned by emotion. When Simone reached him, he took her hands and smiled. "You're breathtaking," he whispered. The ceremony was simple but meaningful. They'd written their own vows, promising to support each other's dreams, celebrate each other's successes, and face challenges together as equal partners. "I promise to always see you," Simone said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "To value your opinions, respect your ambitions, and love you exactly as you are. I promise to build a life with you, not just beside you. I promise to say yes to help when I need it and to offer help freely when you do." Dominic's vows brought tears to her eyes. "I promise to encourage your growth even when it scares me. To step back when you need space and step forward when you need support. To be your partner in every sense, building not just businesses but a family, a home, a legacy we create together." When the officiant pronounced them married, Dominic kissed Simone, with such joy that the entire crowd erupted in applause and cheers. The reception was elegant but warm, filled with laughter and dancing and heartfelt toasts. Thomas Chen, the developer who'd known Alois, stood to speak. "I knew Alois Washington for over 30 years. She was brilliant, determined, and sometimes impossibly stubborn. But her greatest achievement wasn't the $700 billion empire she built. It was raising a granddaughter with the strength to handle that empire and the wisdom to use it well. Alois would be so proud of you, Simone. We all are." More toasts followed. Janet spoke about Simone's transformation from uncertain newcomer to confident leader. Monica shared stories from their friendship, emphasizing Simone's kindness and resilience. Dominic's business partner talked about how Simone had impressed everyone in the industry with her sharp instincts and ethical approach. Finally, Dominic stood to toast his new wife. "A year ago, I watched Simone sleep in her car and work a job cleaning toilets. I saw her face rejection after rejection and keep moving forward. I saw her accept help from a stranger without letting pride get in the way. I saw her learn an entirely new industry in months and make decisions that increased her portfolio by billions. He turned to face Simone directly. But what impressed me most wasn't any of that. It was the way you stayed kind through everything. The way you accepted your ex-husband's apology with grace even though he didn't deserve it. The way you immediately thought about helping others once you had resources. The way you honor your grandmother's memory by being exactly the woman she knew you could be. Tears streamed down Simone's face as Dominic continued. You're the most remarkable person I've ever met, and I'm honored to spend my life with you. To my wife, Simone Castellano. The crowd cheered. Simone stood and kissed her husband, overwhelmed with happiness. They danced their first dance to a song about new beginnings and second chances. Dominic held her close, whispering how much he loved her and how excited he was for their future together. Later in the evening, as the party continued around them, Simone and Dominic slipped away to a quiet corner of the garden. They stood under the stars, his arms around her, both reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. Can you believe this is real? Simone asked. Sometimes I have to pinch myself. A year ago you didn't know I existed. Now you're my wife. A year ago I was broken and lost. Now I'm building an empire and married to my best friend. Dominic kissed the top of her head. What's next for us? What do you want to accomplish? Simone had thought about this extensively. I want to expand the affordable housing initiative, launch the foundation for women leaving difficult relationships, develop sustainable communities that serve as models for responsible growth. And, she paused, smiling, I want to start a family with you. I want all of that too. Dominic turned her to face him. We're going to build something amazing together, not just businesses but a life that matters. They returned to the party hand in hand. Simone danced with Mr. Harrison, Monica, and several business partners. She laughed until her sides hurt and ate cake and celebrated with the people who'd become her chosen family. As midnight approached, she stepped outside one more time, needing a moment alone with her thoughts. She looked up at the stars and imagined her grandmother watching over her. I did it, Grandma, she whispered. I accepted the inheritance, learned the business, found love, and built a life I'm proud of. Thank you for seeing in me what I couldn't see in myself. Thank you for the painful lessons and the patient mentor and the second chance at everything. A gentle breeze stirred the cherry blossoms, and Simone chose to believe it was Aloysius' way of saying she was proud. Dominic found her minutes later. Everything okay? Everything's perfect. I was just telling my grandmother about our wedding. What do you think she'd say? Simone smiled. I think she'd tell me to stop talking to the sky and go dance with my husband. They went back inside together. The party continued until the early morning hours, a celebration of love, success, and the beautiful life Simone had built from the ashes of her old one. 3 months later, Simone stood in the lobby of the first building in her affordable housing initiative. 50 families were moving in, people who'd been struggling just as she once had. She'd made sure each apartment was comfortable and dignified, with modern appliances and community spaces designed to foster connection. A single mother with 2 children approached Simone, tears in her eyes. Thank you for this opportunity. You don't know what it means to have a safe, affordable place to raise my kids. I do know, Simone said gently. I've been where you are, and I promise you this is just the beginning. Things get better. That evening, Simone returned to the penthouse she now shared with Dominic. He was in the kitchen making dinner, and she wrapped her arms around him from behind. Good day, he asked. The best. Watching those families move into safe homes, knowing we made that possible. It's better than closing any business deal. Dominic turned and kissed her. Your grandmother would be so proud. I hope so. I'm trying to honor her legacy while making it my own. You're doing both beautifully." They ate dinner on the terrace, watching the sun set over the city. Simone's empire had grown to $740 billion, but the number mattered less than what she was doing with it. Affordable housing, sustainable development, scholarships, and her new foundation supporting women in transition. She'd also hired a team of people who'd been formerly incarcerated, giving them second chances in property management and construction. She'd established a mentorship program pairing successful developers with aspiring ones from underrepresented communities. Every decision she made honored the lessons her grandmother had taught her. Use wealth to create opportunity. Accept help gracefully. Help others climb the same way someone helped you. Build things that last beyond your own lifetime. A month later, Simone discovered she was pregnant. She and Dominic cried together with joy, talking late into the night about the family they were starting and the values they'd pass on. "Our child will know what it means to build something meaningful," Simone said, her hand on her still flat stomach. "They'll understand that wealth is responsibility, not just privilege. They'll learn to help others and accept help without shame. They'll have an amazing mother to teach them all of that." Simone thought about Derek occasionally, wondering if he'd heard about her success and her marriage. But those thoughts were fleeting and held no pain. Derek represented a chapter of her life that was completely closed. She'd learned from it, grown past it, and moved into something infinitely better. On the first anniversary of inheriting her grandmother's empire, Simone hosted a gala to launch the Alois Washington Foundation officially. The event raised $50 million in one night for programs supporting women leaving difficult situations. She gave a speech that brought the audience to tears, talking about her grandmother's vision and her own journey from sleeping in a car to running a $700 billion empire. "My grandmother taught me that accepting help isn't weakness," Simone told the crowd. "When Monica let me stay in her spare room, when Dominic offered to teach me the business, when people extended hands to lift me up, I could have refused out of pride. Instead, I accepted with gratitude, and that acceptance changed my life." She looked at Dominic, who sat in the front row beaming with pride. "Now it's my turn to extend hands to others, to say yes when someone needs help, just as people said yes to me. That's the legacy my grandmother really left me. Not money, but the understanding that we rise by lifting others." The foundation would help thousands of women over the coming years. Emergency housing, legal support, job training, childcare assistance, financial education. Everything Simone wished she'd had access to during her darkest days. As she stood on that stage, looking out at a room full of people committed to making a difference, Simone felt her grandmother's presence strongly. This was what Alois had envisioned. Not just wealth, but purpose. Not just survival, but flourishing. Not just success, but significance. 2 years after inheriting the empire, Simone stood in the nursery she and Dominic had created in their home, holding their newborn daughter. They'd named her Alois, after the grandmother who'd made everything possible. "Look at the city, sweetheart," Simone whispered to her sleeping baby. "One day, you'll help build it. You'll create opportunities and solve problems and make people's lives better, just like your great-grandmother did." Dominic wrapped his arms around both of them. "She's perfect, just like her mother. I hope she never has to struggle the way I did. But if she does, I hope she learns the same lessons. That she's enough. That accepting help is strength. That the most meaningful success is the kind that lifts others up." Baby Alois yawned, completely unaware of the legacy she'd inherited or the parents determined to teach her well. Simone's life had been transformed completely in just over 2 years. From broken and homeless to wealthy beyond measure. From dependent and insecure to confident and capable. From loveless to deeply cherished. But the greatest transformation had been internal. She'd learned to value herself, to recognize her own strength, to accept help without shame, and to build a life that mattered. Her grandmother had given her $700 billion, but the real inheritance was the journey itself. The lessons learned through struggle, the confidence gained through adversity, the wisdom to use resources well and the compassion to share them generously. As Simone stood in that nursery with her husband and daughter, she understood completely what her grandmother had known all along. She was worthy, she was capable, she was enough. And she always had been. The money had simply given her the opportunity to prove it.